Hey y'all, Tim Norton with your midweek devotional. And one of the images that's been captivating my imagination for the last few weeks is the difference between a blizzard and winter. And this has been a metaphor that's been tossed around on various webinars, and you might have heard it from some of the pastors because we've been talking about it a lot. But in some instances, this pandemic feels like a blizzard. It's a storm that we're meant to hunker down and survive, knowing that it's going to be temporary, and that some of the hardships that we're facing won't last long. But in many ways, the truth that this pandemic is not just a blizzard, but it's also going to be the start of a winter season with ramifications that ripple into the coming months and potentially beyond. When that truth starts to sink in, it can be pretty discouraging, disorienting, and alarming. It can feel like we're spinning out of control and facing a future that we don't know how to prepare for. And the passage of scripture that I want us to turn to, I hope can provide us some encouragement and provide us a sense of stability in the midst of uncertain times, because it's a passage of scripture that sees Jesus addressing instability and uncertain times for the disciples. We're going to look at John chapter 20 in verse 21. And if you can imagine what it would be like to be a disciple, having watched Jesus just been crucified on Friday, and now it's Sunday night, and Jesus has risen from the dead, but you don't know it yet, and you're sitting in a room locked to protect yourself from the people that killed Jesus. Because at this point, you are pretty sure that the people that killed him would probably kill you if they had the chance. And it's to that group of scared, frightened, and uncertain people, Jesus comes in and speaks these words. "Peace be with you," he says. "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." While the disciples are facing something significantly different than COVID-19, we can see some parallels to a set of circumstances that are scary, that have an uncertain future, and where the disciples don't know how to proceed because it was so radically different than their expectations of what the future would hold. And in the midst of that environment, that set of circumstances, Jesus offers that verse. And if we look closely, we can see that Jesus is asking for them to focus on the same three things that we have been talking about in our midweek devotionals. The first is connecting with Christ, connecting with him. He said, "Peace be with you." The disciples needed to know that if Jesus has really risen from the dead, then there is a peace that transcends any hardship and any circumstance that they might be facing, any failure that they might be engaging in over the course of the rest of their lives. If Jesus has risen from the dead, it changes everything, and he wanted them to focus on that truth and let it transform their understanding of the present moment in light of eternity. But he also says, "Peace be with you. I'm sending you. Get out. Go back into that environment that you are afraid of." The disciples needed to know that if they're going to follow and trust in Jesus and receive that peace, then they're going to join his mission. And Christians throughout the ages know that the life of a Christian is the life of a missionary. And whether we're sent across the street or across the globe, if we are joined with Christ, then we are the conduit of his grace. We are the means that he continues his work in the world. And so we dare to believe that in this pandemic, for us, we are still on mission. That doesn't mean that we get outside of our homes and endanger our neighbors, but it does mean that we think creatively about ways to still be sent, to still engage those that might be close to us, but far from God. And the last thing is a little bit harder to see in our English translations, but in the original Greek of this book of John, Jesus doesn't say, "I'm sending you individually." He says, "I'm sending y'all." He uses a plural word, "I'm sending you." We could translate it, "I'm sending y'all together." Jesus wants the disciples to stay in community, to encourage each other, to lean on each other, and to be mutually spurred on as they keep their eyes fixed on Christ and as they continue on his mission. And those are the three things that no matter what circumstances might be spinning in our way, they can fix our heart and our eyes so that we might weather this pandemic together. And what we're going to do in this week's midweek devotional is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. I want to challenge you to take a moment, pause the video, and think, pray, and consider what the Lord might want you to be pursuing in each of those three areas. What one thing might God have you to focus on? Something in connecting with Christ, some practice. We've developed a worksheet that can help you discern through those specific things, and I invite you to jump on to the First Pres website, go to our online tab, and download that worksheet for you to work through with you and the Lord, or with you and your family in prayer as well, and determine specifically for you and yours what is your one thing. And to help us think creatively, a couple of the staff have already taken up the challenge and want to share with you what their one thing is going to be for the next month.
This month I'm living out my faith.
And I'm living out my faith this month.
I'm living out my faith this month
by spending time with the Lord in reading scripture, in journaling, and in prayer.
I downloaded the Bible Project app and I'm using their Read Through the Bible in a Year plan.
Setting an alarm each day at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. to stop and pray.
Reading a book recommended by my dear staff friend, Robert Manning, called Switch on Your Brain by Caroline Leaf.
Within the community, I'm trying to reach out to primarily men in our community, trying to encourage them during this odd time.
Additionally, I will continue making phone calls and texts and reaching out to people in our congregation.
Connecting and relating with our students. We have our game night on Wednesday night. Please tune in for that.
With our young adults community, we have been playing Scrabble on an online app.
Also, I'm trying to read storybooks to the preschoolers and get that on videotape for them to have to listen to at home.
In my neighborhood, I've been praying for my neighbors as I walk my dog.
Picking up groceries for anyone who may need it.
Within the city, Angie and I are inviting neighbors occasionally over for driveway gatherings, socially distanced of course.
By participating in the Mask the City campaign,
Kurt and I received our stimulus check and we wanted to be generous of that and share a good portion of it, and so we've given some of those funds to El Buen Pastor.
So that's my one thing.
That's my one thing.
That's my one thing.
That's my one thing.
What's your one thing?
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 well, that's my one thing. What's your one thing?
So there it is. What's your one thing? What's going to keep your heart and your mind and your eyes focused in a set of circumstances that we didn't ask for, can't anticipate, and don't know how they're going to end? What's the thing that you're going to pick in each of those categories as a spiritual discipline, as a practice of connecting with Christ, our spiritual community, and the wider city, so that weeks from now, months from now, we might look back on this time and say, despite the tumbling circumstances, the Lord was at work in us and through us. That's what we dare to believe as we're followers of Christ. That even if the context has changed, the calling is the same. Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father sent me, I am sending you." Take care, friends.